I have so many PHYTOSURGENCE products, so I thought it was time to do a full brand review complete with swatches of every shade that I own. Since they're an online-only brand, I hope this gives you a better idea of their products and helps you out in case you're looking to make a purchase. And full transparency, I bought all these products with my own money, all like 14 of them, and I've never gotten any PR or free stuff from the brand. So let's get into it. Let's start with the Spectral Sunlight Cream Bronzer, and this is different than probably any cream bronzer you've tried before. It is a very stiff formula. It kind of reminds me of air-dried red clay or mud. Like if you rub your finger on it, you're not going to get any product. The only other cream bronzer that I can really compare it to is the e.l.f. putty bronzers. Those have a really similar stiff formula that goes on kind of powdery and matte. So this is the newest product to the brand, and a cool thing about its release is that they came out with 14 shades in two kind of color vibes. So there's golden tones and rosy tones, 7 shades in each. And I got shade 7, which is a golden one. And I really like the tone of this bronzer. Even though on the website they say that even though it's like golden and rosy, they're both pretty neutral leaning. I was kind of hoping it was a little bit more yellow just because that's pretty rare to find on the market. But I do really like the tone that it is, and it just looks very natural on my skin. I definitely could have gone a shade deeper, but it's hard when you're ordering online just based off of swatches, and 9 looked a little too dark. But because this is a pretty sheer formula and you can build it up, I think the deeper shade would have totally been fine. And they say that everyone can use like 2 to 4 shades, and they're pretty flexible because of that sheerness. So for application, I used to use a dense brush, and that was mostly because I wanted to pack it on to get that pigment since it's pretty close to my skin tone. But now I'm trying to use the way that they recommend, which is using more of a like stippling brush to just kind of sheerly apply it, and it ends up looking like a finely milled powder on your skin. So they recommend just kind of swirling it in there until you see the product pick up on the brush. I find that this does give a really airbrush finish, but it just takes a little bit longer for me to build it up to the visibility that I like. Because sometimes it's like, am I putting anything on? But that's really just a testament to how natural it looks. Okay, and now I think you can see how it's just kind of like lightly tanned my face and it looks super believable. Just this side has nothing, and this side has a nice bit of a golden glow going on. It's very lovely, very natural, very different than other bronzers that I've found on the market. I feel like this is a pretty good bronzer for beginners just because of how foolproof it is. Like you can just keep layering and layering and you're not going to really overdo it. It would take a long time to get to that point. So if you struggle with bronzers kind of like being heavy-handed with them, I think this is a great one to try. Now for the other side. I really got to swirl up in there. Getting really personal, this poor brush. Okay, wonderful. And here we are all bronzed. And I really like that it's more of a satin skin-like effect and it's not super dewy, which means that I don't have to set this, which is really nice, and it lasts pretty much all day. And if it does kind of fade off, because I'm a face toucher, so I don't expect products on my cheeks to last forever, but it never fades off in patches or like looks disjointed. It fades very evenly where I've been touching. So I just think this is a really lovely product. I'm so glad that they came out with a complexion product like this that is so different from other ones on the market. I feel like that's kind of their MO. As you'll see. I think I would definitely reach for this more if I had gotten that deeper shade, but now that we're getting into winter, maybe this will become my go-to, and I can always pick up number 9 in the spring and summer. Next is the Spectral Shine Radiance Balm, and I think they did a really good job not calling this a cream highlighter because people would be even more confused. If I had to categorize this super broadly, like where would you place this in a Sephora? Technically, it's a cream to powder highlighter, I guess, but that's not the full story. The brand describes it as like a finishing powder meets a highlighter, and that is definitely more accurate because the glow that this gives you is akin to like an hourglass finishing powder. They're both very subtle but refined, and will have people being like, is this doing anything? Until you get it in the right light, and then you just look like an angel. So like the bronzer, this is a very dry and stiff and thin formula, unlike any other cream highlighter-y product I've tried before. It's a little bit more malleable to the touch than the bronzer, so if you rub your finger on it, you will get a little bit of product. They have a really great range of shades, and I've seen some people even use lighter ones under their eyes as like kind of a setting finishing powder, or people using deeper shades as this kind of ethereal bronzer. But I went with a more traditional highlighter shade for my skin tone, and this is Solar Sheen, which they describe as a neutral rosy gold. But on me, it just pulls a little bit more yellow, which I do like. So the application is probably the most divisive part of this little product. They have some pretty specific application directions on their website, and it reminds me of SpongeBob's like bubble blowing technique, and neither of them are really like the perfect application method for me, and let's talk about why. So with a brush, similar to the bronzer, they recommend kind of aggressively digging your brush in there until you see the product start to build up, and then you can softly apply it to your face. And this works okay for me if my face is well moisturized. I have very dry skin, and once that moisturizer is absorbed, this just kind of like drags on my skin, and I have to keep going back over and over, dipping back in, repeating the process to get it to the level that I like, and until I'm able to see that soft diffused finish. And don't come for me if you love this product. I really like it too, but I know it's not supposed to look like a highlighter. It's just a little hard for me to get the product onto my face. So here I'm gonna try the brush method. I already did my digging, and it does give a really light application, but I just still see so much product on the brush, and I'm just like, why aren't you coming off? What are you afraid of? So I kind of feel like with this, I have to get my brush loaded to such a critical mass that it just has to deposit it onto my face, and that's when I start to see results. Look, yeah. And today I applied moisturizer just when I did my skincare, but then I went in with another helping of moisturizer right before filming because I know these products just kind of enjoy being on a well moisturized face, and that's not always me. So let's see if you can see. Just a little cheeky glow. On this side, I'll do the finger technique and we'll see what that's about. I've tried this numerous times, and my one issue with this is that my skin's so dry that I feel like I'm just dragging my skin around in a very uncomfortable way. But to go back to their instructions, they recommend swirling your finger around till you pick up product. I got some. And then swiping or dragging it on your skin to blend. And just going like that. You see it deposited for sure. And then just kind of going like that. And that gives you a bit more of an intense look than doing the brush. So this is what I normally go for when I'm using this product because I just don't have the patience, especially if I'm wearing the bronzer where I have to do a whole bunch of dipping. I don't really want to spend that time on this highlighter as well. So this is the method that I usually use because I'm impatient and it just gives me the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time. So I just feel like maybe this product isn't the best for dry skin, or at least you need to be aware of how you need to prep your skin to get the product to do what it wants to do. And I think I'll apply some with my finger on the other side just to get that impact. Wahoo. And I'll take some and just put it lightly on my nose, chin, under my eyebrow. So the effect of this is just a really soft and diffused look on your skin. It's not gonna be blinding or in your face. And I think that's great because there's definitely a market for this. A lot of highlighters just wanna be the biggest, the brightest. And I love that this gives more of an ethereal and diffused finish. Also, the longevity of this is great. It is the most powder-like of their cream to powder formulas, and so it just lasts all day. All right, next let's talk about my favorite product of theirs, and these are their Skin Spark blushes. This is a true cream formula, and they describe the texture as similar to a chocolate truffle, and I totally agree. Like, there's no other way to describe it. And unlike most cream blushes, it dries down to a more natural kind of satin finish, and it's not gonna look overly hydrating or dewy on your skin, which I like that I can use that year round. The way that I apply it depends on the season. In the warmer months, it gets even creamier, and I can just go in there with my finger and dot the product on and then go in with a brush to blend it out. But as it gets colder, the product gets a little bit stiffer, and then I find it's best to go in just with a brush into the pot to kind of swirl it around and then use the warmth of my hand to warm it up and then apply to my face. Either way, I find that it applies very evenly and is easy to control, even though it is a more pigmented product. So I have 7 of these blushes. I originally got 3, and then I just got 4 more a couple months ago, and I'm just obsessed. So let's talk about the shades that I have. I've marked with an asterisk ones that have a lower white base. I really like these ones because they're less opaque and they're better suited for deeper skin tones because they're not gonna look like have that risk of turning gray or ashy. For First we have Ember, which is described as a coral tangerine. This is just a juicy papaya, just a lovely coral that doesn't have too much pink in it. I love wearing this in the spring and summer, and it looks phenomenal layered with other pink and red shades. In the fall, I've also been enjoying adding this to more rust-colored tones to kind of just add that pop of vibrancy and make me feel a little bit more alive. Fume is described as a dusty neutral rose, and this has been my go-to shade for so long, at least a year now. It's a really subdued pink, and it's a great neutral blush for every day. I also especially like to use this with cooler toned looks or ones with like icy accents. It just accentuates everything perfectly without overpowering the look. Swelter is newer to my collection, and this is just a really bright, cheery cranberry, and I can't wait to wear this one in the winter. I love swatching it and just seeing how much vibrancy it brings to my face. I think this will look awesome with like plum looks or more olive, emerald green looks, just anything kind of holiday related. This is gonna be a star for sure. Another new one to my collection, and this is Smolder. It's described as a burnt apricot peach. And this is a more muted and natural looking orange blush. I really like to layer this with a brighter blush like Ember to just create more dimension. This is also awesome on its own if you have like a lot going on with your eyes or something and you just want to have a more bronzy nude look for the rest of your face. Next we have Exothermic, which is described as a neutral caramel rose, and this to me is just a really lovely plummy brown. I haven't decided how I feel about this yet because sometimes it looks like a bruise to me and then sometimes it looks very chic, and it's quite a unique shade, so I'm really glad that I got it, but I'm still trying to figure out exactly how best to use it and pair it with looks. I haven't really had a blush this neutral or cool leaning in my collection before. And now we have Evaporate, which is another go-to of mine. This is described as a neutral smoky peach. And this natural pinky beige has just really been my go-to when I don't know what blush to wear and I don't really want to think about it because it just goes with anything. It doesn't overpower a look. It's just a really reliable shade for me. And lastly, I have Sublimate, which is the blush I'm going to be wearing today. This is another new one to me, and it's described as an earthy, deep cherry. And it is just such a pretty brick red shade that has like a bit of that brightness of a cherry. And since it's a little cooler, I'll be doing my little method of picking it up with a brush from the pot and then kind of blending it out on my hand to disperse that pigment. I really like how even though this is a deeper shade, it just still feels very brightening and lively from that cherry tone going on. I've been wearing this shade a ton this fall. I just love the richness that it gives to my skin and just gives a little bit of brightness. And I've been wearing it a lot along with other terracotta shades in my collection. That's just like what fall is for to me. So speaking to the longevity of these products, I find that they last really well on my skin compared to other cream blushes that are more slippy and oily because they just have that dry down that kind of locks them in place without the need for setting it with another powder blush. I actually just did a wear test with Tower 28 blush on one cheek and the PHYTOSURGENCE blush on my other cheek, and I wore them both for 6 hours, and I'll put in clips of the befores and afters, and I found that they both lasted really well. I think because the PHYTOSURGENCE is a bit brighter, it looks like it had greater longevity, but the Tower 28 was on this cheek, which is where I'm always resting my hand, so I think in the end they both performed really well. And I think they both are great options if you're looking for a cream blush that you don't have to baby so much. I just wanted to note about the packaging that my one nitpick would be that I wish that they just came in like bigger pots or less shallow ones so they could just be wider, because it's a little hard to get your finger in there. Like if I had false nails or something, I know that it'd be kind of annoying to get my finger in there. And even with brushes, it can be a little hard to get bigger brush heads in there and kind of evenly disperse the product, which is why I end up having to go back with my hand. So that'd be my one little nitpick. If I had to pick just two of these shades to recommend, I think that it would be Evaporate, because it is such a great neutral shade and just perfect for every day. When I'm getting cream blushes, especially because they expire so quickly, I say having 7 just from this brand, I just really want to make sure that I'm going to be able to use them often. And along with Evaporate, I think I would recommend, well, Sublimate. I'm just wearing it all the time right now, and I think it's be good to have like a more neutral everyday one and then a deeper one that you can kind of build up to have a more dramatic or moody look. So those would be my 2 recs. Oh, I forgot to mention, but they're having a sale November 9th to 11th, which is why I wanted to get this video out in time to like give y'all information if you're interested in shopping this sale. But along with this sale, they're releasing 2 new blush shades that are pretty much deeper versions of Evaporate and Fume, which are my favorite shades of theirs, aside from Sublimate, which is a new love of mine. These are tried and true. So I'm probably gonna pick these up. I didn't think I'd be shopping it, but I'm excited to see those, and keep an eye out for it if you are thinking of shopping that sale. Okay, next up, let's chat about their fluorescent eyeshadows. So they have two main types of eyeshadows. There's more satiny ones and then more glittery ones that are like packed with sparkle. The satin shades that I have from them are both from their Weathered Woods collection, and these are really like grungier neutral shades that lean a little gray. The formula for this, you might be noticing a pattern, but it's not gonna be creamy like other cream shadows you may have tried in the past. It is very firm and has a really thin, slippy texture, and you'll rub your finger on it and think you've picked up nothing, and then your finger is just loaded with pigment. So it's really easy to apply with a finger if you want to put it all over your lid, but I haven't had as much success using a brush. It's just been difficult for me to actually deposit that pigment onto my lid, even if I'm using a primer. And I do know people have had success using brushes, but I'm just not one of them. But for the wear of these products, it is phenomenal, especially if you have hooded or oily lids, because I don't. I have dry eyes, dry lids, I mean both, but they're hooded, and so I always get a lot of creasing, and I just don't really care. I don't put on eye primer usually because my eyes lids are so dry that it just makes them even drier. But these don't need it at all, and they will just stay all day. They're not gonna crease. They're not gonna like disappear on your lids. They're just phenomenal in that way. So the two more satin finish colors that I have are Chilled Cherry and Oxidized Olive. So Chilled Cherry they describe as a cool taupey rose, and on me it's a silvery purple that can sometimes look a little frosty depending on how heavily I apply it. In a swatch, you can see that deeper red base, but I feel like when it's on my lids and on my skin tone, that gets a little lost. I think it still looks pretty, but it's just not my favorite color on my complexion personally. And then for Oxidized Olive, they describe this as an olive-leaning greigey bronze. And I mean, that description is just bang on, but the gray is just a little bit more prominent on my skin tone than I thought it would be based on the swatches. I think in the eye swatch that I did here, it looks more olive, but I just have so many distinct memories of getting ready to like go out at night, and I just want to do an easy one and done, and then I just get a little deflated after I put it on, just because I think that gray that comes through kind of just like flattens my eyes and makes them look, I don't know, not as dimensional, not as vibrant as I would like. Yeah, that gray tone just makes my eyes feel a little dull when this is all I'm wearing on my lids, so I will usually go in with a sparkly topper, even one of their other shades like fractal freesia or something, and I've done it in this clip that you can see, and it just adds a little more pop. Maybe I'm just a glittery girl, and if you just like that kind of like one tone kind of like shimmer, I think you would totally love this, but I just like a little bit more dimension on my eyelids. So I think these shades are really pretty, and I know a lot of people who look phenomenal on them, but I think combined with my skin tone, just kind of making them pull more gray, as well as just my personal affinity to a bit more sparkle, a bit more dimension, I think these just fell a little bit flat for me, and I don't think I'll be getting any more of these more satin finish shades from them. But I've seen them look amazing on so many other people, so I think these are worth giving a shot, especially since they're more reasonably priced than similar high-end one-and-done shadows. Okay, now let's get into their sparkly shadows. So these have a very similar thin base, but they're filled with chunks of different size shimmers, and I think I saw the founder talking about how with like light reflection technology, having those different sizes just makes it look like this scattered kind of like night sky effect. I could just be making that up, but it really does give that kind of like a beautiful shimmering effect on the eyes and in swatches. My one issue with this formula is that I find them to be a bit flaky, even if I kind of warm up the product on my hands. Like I've kind of like broken the seal at the top, and so it should be getting into the more smoother creaminess, but I'm still getting kind of like bigger chunks on my hand when I rub around in the product. I also wear a lot of glittery eyeshadows, and I have never gotten glitter in my eye, and I think that's just because they're very finely milled sparkles. But because these have different size kind of shimmer pigments, I do have a problem of those kind of bigger chunks when I'm applying them, getting that fallout and them landing on my lash, or unfortunately one time in my eye, and that was super uncomfortable. And I think kind of like just colored my impression of these shadows, unfortunately, because it was the first time that it happened, and so now every time I use them, I'm just like getting flashbacks, and I'm like, be careful. And the most recent time that I used these, I was really careful to kind of rub off the excess and like tilt my head back while applying it, and I still got like chunks in my lashes that I then had to pull out and make sure everything was okay before I went on with my night. And it's just like a bit of babying that I don't have to do with other products. Like, even if I do get a little bit of fallout from like a space cowboy or something, they're so fine. I don't have that experience of them like getting into my eyeballs and being physically uncomfortable because they're so tiny. So since I gave these another shot and still had the same experience, I just think that these products might just not be for me, which is a shame because they look so beautiful on so many other people. But let's chat about the shades that I do have. So first is Fractal Freesia, that kind of topper shade that I mentioned I used on the satin shadows. This is described as a translucent base with neutral gold shimmer, and these shimmers look a little silvery on me, so I would only use these in pretty small amounts, but that's not unlike anything of the other kind of wet looking eyeshadow toppers that, you know, we're all familiar with, like an Urban Decay Space Cowboy or Ritz. But despite what I've said previously, I really like the scattered effect that you get from these different size shimmers. I just wish that they wouldn't, you know, wander into my eyeball. So I did a little comparison between Fractal Freesia and Urban Decay Space Cowboy and ColourPop's Wrists, just so you can see the difference between all these sparkly topper shades. And on my skin tone, Fractal Freesia's base is the least translucent, I think because it is like a bit of a lighter beige and that just stands out more on my tan skin. But I think you'll be able to see the effect of those different size shimmers and how that creates more of a sparkly effect than something that just looks like smooth, wet water. And the last eyeshadow that I have from ColourPop is called Crystal Constellation, and it's from their Celestial Ceremony collection. Very sparkly shades in that collection. And this is described as a neutral medium deep brown with crystalline shimmer. And on my skin tone, that medium deep brown translates to more of a lighter brown, but I think this is really nice in the evening, especially if I add just a little bit more of like a smoky brown to the outer corner, some liner. It's a really nice vibe. Again, the scattered stars in the sky effect that you get from these pigments are just absolutely beautiful, but I just see those bigger pieces when I'm applying it and I get a bit nervous, so I haven't been reaching for it as much. So I'm just gonna put on Crystal Constellation so that you can get a vibe for what this kind of sparkly formula looks like on the lids. And I'm just kind of swirling my finger in a little bit, nothing too crazy. So you can kind of get a better idea of how this reflects light and that kind of milk chocolatey tone on the lids. I think it's a really pretty neutral shadow and I really want to like it more, but those glitters just make me want to fight. The last product that I wanted to talk about is actually a skincare product, and this is Verdant Forcefield, their restorative moisturizer. And I have been using this regularly for about 3 months, and now I'm like definitely gonna buy it. It is such a nourishing moisturizer, and my skin is so dry that it just loves to eat up any moisturizer that I apply, and it's like nothing even happened. But this absorbs very easily, and then it still leaves you with a bit of a glowy, kind of nice to the touch feeling. Like it feels like your skin has been replenished. It's juicy. It's absolutely wonderful. But just to get into more details, it's a medium thickness moisturizer, very rich without feeling super heavy. It just has a really plump texture that's nice to touch. It doesn't spread super easily since it's a little bit thicker, so instead of just dotting it onto my face, I will apply it to my hands and kind of like rub it like this and then smooth it over so that I can pat it in, because I find that wherever you put it, that's where it wants to stay. And also, since I have dry skin and typically reach for a richer moisturizer, I sometimes struggle with them being so heavy that they break me out, but this one has not done that, and I've been using it morning and night for 3 months. It also has PHAs, which is a very gentle acid, and it just exfoliates and strengthens the skin's moisture barrier. And since I have very sensitive skin, I'm kind of wary about a lot of acids, but this one doesn't bother me, doesn't irritate my skin at all. And it also lets me reduce my use of stronger acids to a fewer times a month, and that allows my skin to just have a healthier moisture barrier and just feel less irritated. I used to always apply an oil after I applied my moisturizer because my moisturizer was never moisturizing enough, but I find that I can skip it after using this Verdant Forcefield. It also noticeably helps with any inflamed bumps on my skin, but I will say that my entire skincare routine is geared towards fighting inflammation and helping my sensitive skin recover. So this plus all the ceramides that I use in my skincare routine have helped me maintain a healthy barrier even when I do use acids, and I just find that my skin looks overall less red, less eczema patches. It's just much happier. So I definitely recommend checking this one out. All right, let's do my final thoughts on all of these lovely products. So for ones that I definitely recommend, gotta be the Skin Spark blushes. The shade selection is just gorgeous. They have so many yummy shades and they're constantly coming out with more that I just want to gobble up. The formula is also just one of my tip-top favorites, and I love how natural it looks on and that it's not overly dewy, so it's not going to slip away. You just get those gorgeous pigments that last all day. I would really recommend the bronzer if you're looking for something that is really natural and basically sets itself, or if all the bronzers you've tried have been like too orange or garish looking. This is really hard to mess up just because of how sheer it is and how well it layers on itself. So I also recommend this for beginners who are getting into bronzer because you can kind of like not really be heavy-handed with this one. If you're looking for a nourishing moisturizer, I would totally recommend this one. But I will say that I'm just a really simple skincare gal. Since I have sensitive skin, if it doesn't irritate me and it makes my skin really soft and plump, then I'm happy, I'm stoked. So for products I would approach with caution would definitely be the eyeshadows. I really love the satin formula, but I think here you just need to do your research on the shades available and your undertones just to make sure you're picking something that's best suited for you. But if you have hooded eyes or if you struggle with creasing, I think you'd really love this formula because it is budge proof without being drying. And then also there's the Spectral Shine. I just think that this is a very particular product. I really like it, but I think you need to know what you're getting into. And it kind of feels like a coin toss as to whether you'll actually like it. The application is just a little bit too finicky for me to use every day, but I do really love the effect. I don't know that I would rebuy this, but it just adds a really subtle refinement that is just nice for evenings out or special events. Alright, so that was the lowdown on PHYTOSURGENCE. I hope these reviews and swatches were helpful to you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. That'd be awesome. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!